Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Usman Code. This is going to be a very exciting tutorial series. Today we are going to start Entity Framework Core with C Sharp, and we are using the latest version of Entity Framework Core, which is 8.0, along with ASP.NET Web API 8.0. Alright, before that, why we need to use Entity Framework Core? Entity Framework is an ORM which let us access to the database, and as an engineer we don't have to write so long raw SQL queries to fetch or save data to the database. We don't need to handle connections, opening and closing of those connections, and a lot more which we will uncover during this tutorial series. To start with, I already have created a web API project, and this project is on .NET 8.0 latest version at this time, and I will start by adding a dependency. So I will go to the NuGet package manager and I will search for entity framework here. Another huge benefit of using entity framework is the code remains the same. We just need to change the configuration and it will use against different database. By different database, I mean SQL Server, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and a lot of more different type of databases. To start with this tutorial, I will use MS SQL. All right, I will be installing Entity Framework Core here, 8.0, and I will be installing Entity Framework Core SQL Server package because we are going to use SQL Server in this tutorial, and I will be using Entity Framework Core.tools. Okay, everything is installed, which is good. I will jump back to my project and I will add a folder to manage database context and all the entities. We will use that data folder, and inside the data folder I will add a brand new class. I can name it school db context. Okay, I will add it and it will extend from db context, and a constructor will use base constructor, and the constructor we will be using db context options, and we have to pass those options to the base controller, and we will be adding our entities here. So these will be the properties of db set, which we are basically presenting our tables in the database. Before that, we will need a class to represent our user table in the database. So I will name it user entity, and this entity will have a ID and name. For now, let's keep that entity simple. Okay, let's go back to the school DB context. Here we need to user entity table notation. Okay, now I will be using public DB set of user entity, and that will be presenting over user table, and that is basically a pointer for us up as a property to access records from the user table. So we will be using link queries against that user's property through that school DB context. Okay, our context is ready, and there are a lot of options, a lot of configurations we can play with as per scenario, but for now we are keeping that very simple because this is very basic stage of this tutorial series. We will be covering basics in few episodes, and then we will jump into the advanced features from Entity Framework. All right. So school DB context is ready. Let's go back to the program.cs class, and here we need to add or register our DB context. Builder.service.add DB context, and here we will be passing school DB context, and we will be providing options here because we have to configure the SQL Server, and that is the configuration I was talking about. We just need to change line of code here, and database will be switched, and all the existing code will work with other database provider. For now we are using SQL Server, so for that one, options dot SQL Server, we want to use that one, and we will be providing the connection string here. So for that one, we will be using builder dot configuration dot get connection string, and we can name our connection string as database, school database. So that was all which is required to access database through that school DB context. Okay, now let's jump back to our app settings.json. Here we need to add an object for connection strings, and we will be providing here school database. And first we need to mention data source, which is equal to localhost SQL Express, because I'm using SQL Express for now. Database value will be database, and integrated, we need to put integrated security as true. And to trust the server certificate, we need to provide trust server certificate is equal to true. So that was all required for connection string perspective. Let me save that one and let's jump back to our controller. And let me rebuild that project once, and I will add a migration at, and the package we use, the entity framework core.tools, that enable us to use package manager console here. So don't forget to install that one. Um, First migration. Okay. Unable to resolve server DB context option. Okay, our first migration is now ready. We can see that users table has been created, and in the down it's getting removed or dropped. Okay. Next step would be to apply those migrations. So for that one, we have command update dash database. Let's apply those changes. All right, we have an error. Only the invariant culture is spotted in globalization invariant mode. Okay, so in 8.0, we have that new property by default added in that template. For now, we can make it false. What is that? I will create a separate video, but for now we can make it false. We don't need to bother for now. Okay, so now let's try again. Okay, we can see that a migration is applied, and if we go to home controller here and now have private read only school db context underscore school context, and okay, and here oh, users is equal to underscore school db context dot users dot to list, just to fetch all the user for now. And because we don't have users at this point, we first need to add those users. For that one, I will hard code few users. Why not? Let's just add a new user entity and just provide name one code. Okay, every time we hit that endpoint, we will have a new record added with a different unique ID, and we will be fetching those later through that to list call. And we can simply just return users now. Okay, let me press Ctrl F5 to launch that project. And we don't, okay, we are not saving those changes. So school db context dot save changes. We are not going to async mode at this point. We are just keeping that simple. Okay, so now we can see that we have one record, and as soon as we refresh the page, a new record is getting created, and we are getting all those records from that users table. To double check that, let me open my database. You can see that we have at the moment 11 users, and as soon as I refresh that one, we are now at 12, and here you can also see the 12 user is added. So that was all for this video. That was basically around the configuration of Entity Framework code with ASP.NET Web API template. In .NET 8, we already did that. In our next video, we will see how we can create or add record to the database. Let's say user record through an endpoint, and we will be modifying that get endpoint as well. I will push that code to the repo and will share the link in the video description. In case of any questions or query, do ask me in the comments and I will respond. And don't forget to enjoy your code and see you in the next one.